Happy Wednesday, everyone. I'm Dr. Laurie Davis, host of the Today Show here at the Disability Channel. And on Wednesday, we have a show for special communities. And we decided a couple of weeks ago to talk about the presence of gangs in our communities. And today I've invited a very good friend of mine, Nadzen de Gagne, who has come to share her experience. Good morning, Nadzen. So happy to have you on the show again.
Good morning, Dr. Laurie. It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I invited Nadzen because of her experience, 17 years in the justice system working with youth. And I know that you're going to be able to answer a lot of the questions that I know some of our viewers are asking and are concerned about because we've had people following the show. So Dr. Ramin Modiri would be here, but he's far off to the other side of the world and doing some business over there. And so we've been just kind of winging it here this week without him. We miss him a lot. But he's good looking, but you're prettier.
It's the flower.
Is it the flower? Is it the flower?
Thank you.
So, yeah. So why don't we just start off by sharing with our audience your role that you had for 17 years as a youth worker? What kinds of things did you do? And then we'll go from there.
Sounds good. So I became a youth care worker 17 years ago. A lot of my jobs, I really enjoyed the justice aspect. So I ended up becoming a victim offender mediator. I went and took some training for that, and I worked with adults coming in and out of the court system with their first time charges. We put them through educational workshops, and by the time they were done, we would ask the Crown and the courts to withdraw their charges. So it was kind of like a second chance, if you will.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, then I ended up working in group homes. Those were pretty tough for me to wrap my mind around. It was always a dream that I had my own, but it hasn't happened yet, but there's still time. And then a lot of it, I became an Aboriginal court worker. So I would go and speak with the new arrests, whether they were youth or whether they were adults, and bring it towards the judge and the Crown and decide what the sentence was going to be like, and kind of explain the client's situations and where they were at to make sure that we were meeting their needs and not setting them up to fail. Then I had a wonderful opportunity to work a pilot program for New Horizons, and this was working with youth specifically in and out of the justice system. So in the beginning, we worked for pre-charges, so with them getting their charges, and we realized that a lot of our youth were falling through the cracks after they were charged. So following the conditions, whether there was a curfew, going to school, attending programming, going to counselors, whatever it was that we'd set them up with. And then when that pilot program ended, it was only 3 years. I decided to work for an organization called Straight Up. And this is where a lot of my passion lies. So I grew up in a pretty good household. My father was very strict. We weren't allowed at the mall if we didn't have money in our pocket. We weren't allowed out at a certain time. He had to know the who, what, when, where, whys. And good on him, because if he didn't, I know that I would have gotten in more trouble. I still made some life decisions, and that's why I became the youth care worker. So a big part of mine was understanding the mentality of gangs, why they exist, and what was going on. So I threw myself in the streets. My buddy Owen always says he has a PhD in the streets. You don't get taught that in school, and he's not wrong. So for me to have that credibility, I threw myself in there. I was an outreach worker for about 7 of those 17 years, and putting myself out there with the people. I had addiction issues as well, and that's how it started. When I was younger in high school, I'd be taking off at lunch and going to get high. And I'm sitting here in this house, and I'm seeing all these different people, and I'm seeing different colored rags, and just kind of sitting there. And finally, I think it was after 4 times that I went to hang out, the heavy, which is usually the top dog in the gang, looked at me and said, "Look, you got a choice to make. You either join or you peace out." And I was like, "All right, I'm peacing out." So I left.
Right. So let me ask you this. In your experience, let's go right back to, because we talked about this last week, but Dr. Ramin and I are on the outside looking in. So it's not that we've had the experience. We've been in the communities and they're there, and we know that we have gangs here. And we had a little gang in my rural community where I lived before I moved here. And so, in your experience working with youth, what does the profile look like of a kid who would be, let's say, intentionally recruited? Who do they look for?
They look for the ones that are most vulnerable for sure. So
Okay.
a lot of youth that, with my experience, I had a youth whose mom took off on him. He ended up getting released. He went home, and the mom took off, packed up everything, and pretty well left him. So a big part of it is that sense of belonging. I find that in high school, we're really trying to figure out who we are as a person. You know,
Mm-hmm.
elementary, you start and you're learning certain things, and closer to the end of elementary, okay, and then high school, it's like you're trying to find that place. And that's where I kind of got in the trouble, right? That's where I chose my life situations. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times, at the end of the day, we just want to be loved and appreciated. So these youth are seeking it in the wrong places, not understanding that there's a lot of dysfunction in what they're growing up in. So they don't know any better. They don't have the parent to say, hey, look, these choices and decisions that you're making are probably not the right ones, and this is going to be the outcome. But when their parents are the ones that are the addicts as well and struggling with their life situations and the trauma and everything they've been through. So yeah, you guys have talked, I think it was the first or second one, how a youth can be brought in with just a bag of chips
Mm-hmm.
because they don't have food at home. So yeah, I'll take a bag of chips, and then they sit down and all of a sudden weed's being passed around and a couple drinks and they think, "Oh my god, a thrill, right? Like this is
Right.
awesome. I could be 12, 13, and I could be smoking and I could be." So then they get hooked into that. Now with youth in the Criminal Justice Act, they can only be charged at the age of 12, but don't think for one second that there isn't 9 or 10-year-olds rolling with these crews.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, like it's young. It's young.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times too, it's you're born into it. So it's almost that
Okay.
sense of family. A lot of them, what I've learned is that it's families, it's brothers and sisters, it's cousins, it's aunties, it's uncles, it's dads, it's moms. It's a lot of it is homegrown, if you will.
Oh, wow. Now, I
So
didn't
you,
think about that. That's one
yeah,
thing I didn't think about.
yeah, a lot of it.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's sad. I even had a time where I approached a home to pick up a youth, and there were three guys sitting out front. And the guy gets up right in my face, nose to nose. And he says, "What the beep are you doing here?" And I said, "Look, man, my issue doesn't lie with you. This person was put in this program. She chose to participate, and I'm here to pick her up." And he's still in my face. And I just said, "Look, if you're trying to intimidate me, I don't intimidate well." And then he said, "Get her out of here. That's my niece. I don't want her a part of this lifestyle." But
Oh,
when you're all
wow.
living together, yeah, and they're all living together and they're supporting each other. So, you know, some of these kids are truly born into the lifestyle. And then the ones that aren't, the ones that are recruited and, you know, with the bag of chips or, hey, I got a pair of shoes for you, or hey, I got this, they don't realize how deep they're in it until they start picking up these charges and until all these things start happening. So when you enter a gang, you have to take a minute, and it's dependent on the gang. It's either 36 seconds, 45, whatever their number is. Every gang has a number,
Oh,
and that's
wow.
how many seconds you take for a beating. Now, that's just to enter. If you try to exit, you get beat up by the whole crew, and you'll be lucky if you make it out alive. So these youth don't realize how deep they're in until they start seeing and realizing, okay, maybe this isn't good, but they're already in it.
But it's too late then, almost.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, this is a legal question. Would they attract young people because of the Young Offenders Act? They can't be named. Like they use young people to do the criminal activity. Is there any part in that that you want to expand on for us?
Completely. That's exactly
Okay.
what they do. Yeah, that's
Okay.
exactly what they do. Because a lot of times, moving forward, when they become an adult, dependent on the charge, I mean, if there's a murder charge, that's different. It carries over. Things can still be sealed. But they can't use your youth criminal, um, like, they
Record.
can't use that against you. Yeah, they can't use that
Okay.
record against you because that was the youth. Now they're an adult. Things are completely different at that time.
Right. Right.
So yeah, they
Wow.
definitely use them as their pawns, if you will. That's what they call
Mhm.
them. They're pawns.
Oh, wow. I think Ramin referred to them as the foot soldiers. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes me think of the Ninja Turtles, the Foot Clan, and honestly,
Yeah.
that's a good way to look at it as well, where all these youth are hanging out at this place, and they're all smoking cigarettes and partying and having drinks, and that's how they
Mhm.
get recruited. It seems like a good and lavish lifestyle until they realize that they have to carry a gun or that they're strapped, meaning that they have knives or bear mace
Right.
or whatever that looks like.
Wow. So, what is it that, and I just want to go here for a minute. How many of your youth were, okay, I have to just word this properly, products of the foster care system, the
Mhm.
welfare system? Would they be more prone to being recruited, let's say, than the average kid out there?
Absolutely. I would say yes, because they
Okay.
don't have the proper support.
Right.
Um, for me, like I said, I grew up in a pretty good family. My father raised us pretty well, and things could have gone more sour. We never grew up in the system. I mean, we never came from money,
No, no.
but we didn't grow up on welfare or, going through the addictions or going through family trauma or generational traumas. So a lot of the youth that I serve, I mean, a good population are Indigenous as well.
Right.
So you see the breakdown of what residential schools have done to the parents, the grandparents, and how it's
Mhm.
trickled through. And again, all family related, you know?
Yeah. Now, when a kid exits the foster care system, and I worked with some youth who were getting ready to be exited. They'd been apprehended when they were babies in the system, foster parents. Actually, one of my boys, by the time he was 3, had been in 36 foster homes.
Mhm.
So now they're getting ready to exit. So to me, I'm thinking, and I'm just speculating here, that there's no the support is gone. I don't even have a foster home now, right? As bad as it may have been or as dysfunctional. So they would be prime candidates, I would think, for the gang life as well.
Completely. Because the thing is that they're not taught. So even ourselves, if you think like regular mainstream, and really not the greatest words to use, but just for people to
Yeah.
understand, even us being taught that when you're an adult, they don't teach us about banking, they don't teach us about rent, they don't teach us about those things. So never mind someone coming out of the system. So they're being covered by the government. They're being, given food and whatever else, but it's a breeding ground, I would say,
Oh,
for
yeah.
people to then turn that way because they didn't have the supports before and they're looking for it. And again, at the end of the day, all we want is to be loved and appreciated. So we're going to find the attention wherever it is, whether it's positive or
Wherever we can.
negative.
Right on. Right
Yeah.
on. Wow.
Yeah.
So a day in the life of a gang member could include what kind of activities would we be asked to do? What would be our job description if you were to
So
generalize?
in the beginning, usually, you're the guppy, so you're the pawn. So you're the one out there doing the drug deals. You're the one out there breaking into cars and taking whatever it is of value in order to sell it on the street. So everything and anything comes in hot. Even with straight up, they have certain rules and regulations. So it's a member driven organization, which I think is a beautiful thing. So these are active and ex gang members that have been through the system. And they're pretty well there trying to empower each other to move forward because it's not a lot of things that people understand unless you're in it or around it, right? Um, Promiscuity is definitely something. I mean, people being with multiple partners. So there's one in there where it says to be a faithful partner. Another one is how to be a productive parent. So when they made the building blocks for straight up, it was the members that came to Father Andre and said, "Look, we want out." And he said, "Okay, so how are we going to move forward?" And these guys pretty well explained what it is that they needed and the things that were happening in the gangs, and those were some of them. So they became building blocks for when people exited, that they were going to be a faithful partner. We also had a rule where, you don't date in your first year. You got to take care of yourself because how much good are you giving somebody if we're broken inside and we have a lot of trauma that we need to work on? So it's trauma bonding,
Hmm.
right? We really have people focus on their inner strengths, who they are, the gifts and talents that they come to this earth with.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of it is, they're drinking, they're getting high, they're going out, they're causing ruckus. Wintertime, things kind of slow down a bit because it's cold. but
Mhm.
still, they're trying to find something that they can do. And yeah, it's really sad to sit here and think that we have 9 and 10-year-olds walking around with guns and knives because when they're put on the spot, a lot of times it's for intimidation, right? And they have
Yes.
rules as well, like, you don't go after the elderly, you don't go after women with kids. So in a way, it's gonna sound weird how I say it, but they have a code of ethics. They have
Yes.
things that they honor and respect and things that are allowed to happen and things that aren't. And I find it interesting that they won't go after women with kids and that they won't go after the elderly, but they don't mind hurting everybody else. You know, so
Right.
you think of the mentality and you think about it, and yeah, they do have a code of ethics. Some of it is honorable, some of it you're like, "Okay, that makes sense," but then you sit there on the other side and say, "Wow, like,
Yeah.
how do
Yeah.
we support you moving forward?"
Well, we actually talked about that because Ramin had done his whole thing was about the system itself. He did a lot of research on how they are organized
Mhm.
and the rules, and it's very clean and clear
Yeah.
what the rules are. And wouldn't it be wonderful if other agencies, organizations, businesses ran their organization the same way? So there's positive things in there that
Yes.
actually are functional.
Yes. And I sit here and think, if you could take the things that you're learning on the streets and in the gangs and actually apply it positively to something else. I mean,
Yes,
man, the businessmen that you would have, the people selling vehicles,
yes,
the people building houses, and like there's
yeah,
strengths in there. So it's how do
oh
we
yeah,
switch it to that opposite side and show them the gifts and talents that they
exactly,
have and to use it in a positive way? But again, they never had that,
right,
you know? So they don't see
yeah,
that. It's that lack of value and lack of self.
yes. But I think it's important for our viewers to know that inside there's gifts in there. And if we could take those gifts, like you said, and put them on a different path and just transfer that over,
Yeah.
um, yes, it would really impact the way people do business, the way we're governed,
Yeah.
all of our systems that are broken. That's
And some of
amazing.
my youth, like, they were so polite. I remember this one kid, I'm hanging out with him first day, and we're having conversation, and for me, it was huge. I was teaching them the basics, please and thank yous. So, a youth would be like, "Give me a cigarette," and I'm like, "Excuse me? Give me a cigarette." I'm like, "Oh, no, no, son. Like, the world doesn't owe you nothing, and neither do I. If you want something, you're gonna say please and thank you, and until then, it's not registering with me, right?"
Yeah.
So a lot of the judges would always say, Mr. Gagne, we know which youth are yours because they always come in saying please and thank you. So I'm sitting with this big gang member and he's younger, but he's higher in the ranks with the things that he's done. And we're going for a drive and I have a coffee. We go get a coffee and we're driving, we're having conversation and please and thank yous with him. And I said, for a big, gang member, I said, "You're pretty polite." He's like, "Yeah, thanks." And we just sat there and laughed. It was like, "Buddy, do you not understand, like, the
Yeah.
good gift that you have, that you're kind, that you're actually generous?" And these are things that I like to pull out of them, you know? It was to pull out that other side and like we're saying, yeah, it's organized and yeah, there's positive things and gifts in it. So these were
Yes.
the things that I try and pull to the forefront, but yeah, you got these heavies and they're all tatted up and they just think, they're solid, but big as teddy bears and yeah, Ned's and please may I have a cigarette? Absolutely, kiddo, here you go. Thank you very much. Yeah, you're very welcome. And
Right.
you're just sitting there thinking like at the end of the day, they're people.
That's right. That's
So
right.
I just see
Well,
things different.
I think at the end of the day, when I meet them and I've been working with them, at some point in time, they were somebody's little brand new baby boy.
Absolutely.
And they didn't come here talking about when I grow up, I'm going to be a gang member, or when I grow up, I'm going to be an addict.
Yeah.
No little, no little kid says that.
Do you think I grew up thinking, "Hey, I'm gonna be a drug dealer. Hey, I'm gonna
No.
be an addict." Well, no, that wasn't the plan. It was just life situations that happened and choices that I made. But even
Right.
in that, there were gifts, and that's why I became the youth care worker. That's why I'm good at what I do, and it's not cockiness, I know where I've been, and I know the
Yeah.
credibility and what I bring to people,
Right.
I
Because you
lack
can relate.
judgment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You can relate. You
absolutely.
can connect. Wow.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, what do you think are the pieces that, what happens when in their head or in their heart, when somebody makes that decision, I want to get out? What do you think has clicked, for lack of a better word, when they wake up and they go, I need to get out of here? What do you think that is?
Well, I know there's a lot of fear, and fear is the one thing that holds them back from leaving. Because, like I said, that beating that they take out, that's the main concern, whether they're going to make it out alive.
Okay.
And yeah, so that's a big one. Them always having to look over their shoulder, right? When you belong to a gang and that sense of belonging and that sense of family and trying to disconnect from that. I mean, they get to a point where they realize like this isn't the life that they want anymore and that they deserve better. And I think a
Mhm.
lot of times it's maybe working with the guards or maybe working with some of the workers that they have on the outs or, us trying to instill in them that they're people of value and worth,
Mhm.
that they're still young and that there's still time to create change.
Right.
We always say, Laurie, that the best investment we can make is in ourselves. And I tell them that all the time.
Mhm.
You're number one. It's not your children. It's not your mom, your dad. It's your number one because then people are going to get the best of you if you put in the best of yourself, right?
That's right.
So, what I've learned from the job is a big part of it is fear. Who's going to come after you? And then it's gang retaliation because now you don't have that protection from your crew anymore.
Oh, right.
Now you're on your own. So now you're a target. So, any
Right.
gang member from other places can come and take you out because they know that you got no protection left. So then again,
Wow.
are they going to survive that? So, I mean, perfect example, Laurie. I was working with the youth for 6 years. I worked with him from New Horizons. We put him towards Straight Up. He worked with Straight Up. Him and about four co accused were up against a murder charge. These are youth. And I remember sitting with him the one day, again, taking him for a coffee. And I said, look, kiddo, I don't want to know because I don't want to be called to the stand. I said, but whatever part you had to play, whether you pulled the trigger, whether you were sitting downstairs and you heard the gunshot go off and you were there, whatever part you have to play, there's a life to honor there because you took somebody's son, you took
Mhm.
somebody's brother, somebody's uncle. And you're not God, right? So he went through a lot of programming. This young man jumped through so many hoops. He started investing in himself. He called me and say, Nads, I need to laugh. I'm like, why are you calling me? And then we'd giggle, or he'd call me crying, saying, hey, I'm struggling. I'm going through this. How can I support you moving forward? So anyway, talking about gang retaliation, because a murder was had and there were four co-accused, my youth finally got released at the age of 20, I do believe. And not even a week later, he was shot up by the opposite gang and he was murdered.
Mhm.
So that was a 14-year-old that took a 20-year-old's life. And I sit here and think, oh my God, like that's a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what made me kind of leave the field. I kind of got burnt out there for a bit.
Yeah.
There's only so much that we can do. There's almost only so much you can do to help out and to show them. But I mean, my youth died knowing that he was loved and that
Yeah.
he had value and worth.
Yeah.
So just to kind of paint that picture of like the ages, 14-year-old murdered my 20-year-old.
Wow.
Those are the kids walking around with guns and knives. So I sit here and I think the minute that they feel that they have to use it, otherwise, they get the downfall from the higher ups. So you
Right.
you take this guy out or we're taking you out or we're going after your family.
Right.
What
Wow.
14-year-old wouldn't, you know what I mean? So you sit there
Oh,
and try
yeah.
and understand that
Oh, yeah.
mentality and the position that they're put in and the fear again. A lot of it
Well,
is fear instilled.
yeah. And the thing is, when you're 9 or 10 or 12 or 14, you haven't been here long enough to emotionally even be able to discern things or to make
Mhm.
good decisions, or it's all very random and instinctive, you know?
Yeah,
Wow.
and some of them think it's cool.
Oh,
Some
yeah.
of them think it's
I
cool
know.
that they have a knife or that they have this or that they can do
Yeah.
this, and
Mhm.
those are the
Mhm.
ones I just wanna hug and tell them I love them, and, you know
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So you were involved yourself. Do you want to share a little bit about that? You weren't in a gang exactly, but they scouted you out, I think.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, during the lunchtime, I was hanging out with a friend and we ended up going to this house and I see people smoking and people are smoking weed and having drinks and I'm thinking, oh, this is kind of cool. I mean, I never really saw it much growing up. My parents were pretty strict and whatever else. And so I was like, okay, second day I'm sitting there too, and now I'm meeting more people, and now you're starting to see a couple knives or whatever. And I'm thinking, oh, all right. And I think it was like the third or the fourth time, like I said, the heavy looked at me and said, all right, like you're either in and you sign up or you need to peace out. So he gave me an option. And I was like, yeah, okay, check you later. I don't want to be part of this. But even another part too, like when I was out in Alberta and I started using drugs and dealing them, I remember going for my last pickup. And that's when I saw the person all vested up. That was when they put the vest on and I realized, okay, I'm dealing for HA here. This is not good. And I was 18 or 19 at the time, and that's when I decided I was going to go home. I knew better, and I wasn't deep in enough to have them kind of have their grip on me.
Hmm.
Something popped in, and my parents raised me right from wrong, and I had some pretty good examples growing up. So something just hit me, and it was like, Nidzen, this isn't the life that you want. Like, what are you doing? Give your head a shake.
Right.
So I remember going home and getting myself sober. I didn't go to detox or treatment. Back then, there wasn't a lot of help, not a lot of people able to help you out. And it's only nowadays that, detox centers are learning that it has everything to do with our lack of value and worth. And that's where the trauma comes from, that the addiction is a symptom to our
Hmm.
trauma. They're just
Yes.
learning that.
Yes.
So as I mentioned too, I wanted to be a surgeon when I was younger, but then life situations happen and choices that I made. And that's why I became the youth care worker, is because I had credibility in some places, but also because there was nobody there to help me move forward or to help me get sober, to help me get clean. I did it all on my own. I worked hard and I just knew it wasn't the path I wanted. So that's what made me go to school and get my youth care worker diploma.
Hmm.
I had the credibility and that's where I wanted to go and that's where I wanted to learn.
Yes.
And I threw
But see,
myself in.
yeah, and you see, the difference is you had a foundation to work from. And
Yeah.
so a lot of times kids can get off the rails, go down the wrong path. But if they've got that foundation that you had, mom, dad, family, upbringing, they have something to compare it to. So
Mhm.
just imagine that the gang life looks better to me than what I left.
Yeah.
See, that's what I'm thinking. You had that. You were able to go back and go, wait a minute here. I was brought up better than that. And
Yeah.
but if you don't have that, the gang life could look pretty inviting, even beyond the
Absolutely.
level that you were in, right?
Yeah.
Because it's better than that foster care home where they were sexually abusing me every night,
Yeah.
or it's better than living on the streets, or it's better than.
Yeah.
So what do we need to be doing? What do we need to be doing to support those kids who are in those dysfunctional places? I understand why they go there. I completely get it.
Mhm.
So there's no judgment. But
No.
then what can we do? What do you think are some of the things that need to happen in order to help our kids not go down that path?
What I'm noticing, and because I've been able to be a part of your programs and services, it's like you say, a lot of people are walking around thinking like there's something wrong with them. And I know that I was one of those. I believe that a big part of it definitely comes down to our lack of value and worth. So I sit here and I think, if I loved myself, I wouldn't become a drug dealer. If I loved myself, I wouldn't have plugged myself with all those drugs. If I loved myself, I wouldn't have put myself in a situation to be dealing for Hell's Angels. Like I wouldn't have put myself in danger. If I cared about myself, I would have made different decisions. And that's what I notice in a lot of our youth, and not just that, having the opportunity to work with their families and the parents. It's that lack of value, not knowing who we are, not knowing our place anymore. You know, when the world gets their hands on us, that's when the trauma and everything breaks down, and then it starts breaking down our spirit, and it starts breaking down our confidence and our worth and our value, and then we don't think that we're good enough. So you know what? That's fine. I'll just go join this gang. They appreciate me. They see me, but for all the wrong reasons. Now they're feeding off that fear of yours and that anger and where you've been in life. And then they sit there and think that the world owes them something.
Right.
No,
Right.
like it's not our fault what happened to us in life, but it is our responsibility to heal. That's the power that we get to hold.
That
So a
is
big
so
part
true.
of it I have noticed is that lack of value piece. And that's why I say I try and bring out those gifts and talents in my youth. I try and bring out the positives and
Hmm.
show them the beauty that they are of people. But there's not a lot of us in this world to be able to do that. And not everybody is on the same page. Like I said, detox centers and treatment centers are just learning that addictions are a symptom to our trauma. That it
We
comes
knew that
down
30
to
years ago, right?
absolutely, but that's what I'm saying. Like it's 30 years, they're just starting to learn that.
Hmm.
So it sounds like we're causing more harm than we're doing any good.
Hmm.
You know, and a lot of times too, it's a band-aid fix. Well, no, that it can't be a band-aid fix because we're not doing anything if that's the case.
Hmm.
The
Yeah.
walls of government and everything like that were hard to knock down, and there was a reason that I joined the court system. It wasn't because I agreed with them, it's because I was there to create change. I
Right.
was an advocate, I knew that I had a voice, and I was gonna use it in the right way. These
Hmm.
kids lost their voice a long time ago, but no, they're just as important as
Yeah.
anybody who walks into that courtroom, maybe even more important, because that's where they need the help is when they're kids,
Hmm.
when they're younger.
That's right. That's right. So I'm interested in asking you about the life of a woman in a gang. You know, when we think of a gang, we automatically assume it's all guys.
No.
The public, they think it's guys. So let's talk about the role of the women or the girls in a gang. What do you know about that?
A lot of times for the women, it was like that that mother role. So you'd hear a lot of times, well, I'm heading out to hang out at my hood mom's. So this was a woman that would take care of the kids and make sure that they had food, everything was cooked, you know, that they had a bed to lay in. So it was still kind of that motherly role for women. And at the same time, again, coming to that lack of value and worth, we talk about how they have multiple partners. So, I mean, you have a woman who has a kid with 5 different gang members, you know, or even the guys going out and being with all these other women. So a lot of it was just the abuse and the ownership and, like, how you were kind of a puppet. Again, how they had their talons dug in enough for you to be able to do these things, and us women having the fear of leaving too because us as well would go missing. You know,
Right.
there was still a
Right.
thrill for women being out on the streets and being accepted and being seen. I mean, us women were more emotional beings. I mean, men are as well, but we're a little more emotional. So if we grew up in dysfunction and we grew up with abuse and we grew up with, well, that's all we know. So this man loves me if he's hitting me. This man loves me if, you know.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's not just men. You'd be surprised to how many women are actually in gangs. I mean, you have the certain ones in Saskatoon, IP. A lot of it is women run. And then you got the queens, you got the kings. So your queens are your female, your kings are your male. So some of them are pretty dominant in female roles. So it's still
Wow.
the same thing.
Right.
It's just they're not seen they're not seen of value, but they are at the same time. So if someone was to mess with a gang member's girlfriend, he'd throw down.
Hmm.
That's where he'd stand up for his queen, if you will. But other
Okay.
than that, they don't treat them that well either. Right? That's
Yeah.
their punching bag. That's their
Yeah, it's okay for me to hit her, but you're not allowed to hit her.
exactly. Exactly. So
Right.
they'd stand up for them to a point. So then being that woman and thinking, oh, okay, well, he stood up for me. He loves me. And again, keeping the talons in and saying, yeah, you're mine, you know?
Wow.
So, and then
Wow.
also having that dysfunction of a man and a woman being together. And they've both been through so much trauma that they don't know how to treat each other, how to speak to each other. They're just doing what they know. So the
Hmm.
man thinks that the hitting and everything is okay, and the woman's taking it because that's what she was raised being.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of dysfunction. It's really sad. And I don't know how many women I've had to empower, how many moms I have sat with and had them cry about what they've been through. And, they want the best for their kids, but then the dads are holding on to the sons and they're making them do these things. And then there's only so much that women can do in speaking up, or again, they get the beating, right?
Yes.
So it's a power and control type
Yes.
thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Because there's an exciting factor to it. There's a thrill. And that's kind of what got me being around it, right? Because they weren't things that I saw growing up. The drugs, the money, the guns. I mean, yeah, my dad was a hunter, but it's not with a
Right.
9 millimeter. You know what I
Right.
mean? That's with the
Right.
22 or with the 30-30 or
Mhm.
so I mean, seeing things differently that way. And then understanding the mentality and seeing how they're going out there. There's an excitement and thrill to it, whether you're male or female. But like you
Yeah.
say, I had those foundation, I had those building blocks to realize, no, then this isn't the life that you want. Like, walk away and do better. But not
Right.
everybody has that.
Right. Exactly. So, in the mix of all that, we've got drugs, we have crime, we have abuse. These are the downsides of being in that gang. There's just so much going on at so many different levels that it would be really hard to get out.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of our members still look over their shoulders. It's a 4-year process with straight up. Every year is for one part of that building block to work on. But you're
Right.
still looking over your shoulder because, like I said, the minute that you want to drop, you're not protected anymore. So that's the big fear of why people go back. I had a guy actually, he was one of my practicum students, and he came from the gang life, and, he's telling me his credibility and stuff, and I said, "Wow, like, you're gonna be phenomenal at this job because you've been there, done that, you're gonna be able to connect with these youth." So he became a youth care worker. I think he worked a couple jobs, and he was part of the lifestyle for quite a while, and he ended up getting cancer. He had 7 kids to feed. Yeah, and so because of the situation and where he had been, he went back to the lifestyle because he knew he was gonna be taken care of and provided there. So it's just interesting that, he comes out, he goes to school, becomes a youth care worker, has the credibility, but then he's put in a certain situation where he feels like he has to go back because loyalty from his crew, and he knows that he's gonna be taken care of in that aspect. So, yeah,
Wow.
it's hard for people to walk away because those are the people that had your back for years, that became part of your family, that became all that you knew. So it's different for people, even for people that come out of jail. It's like a whole new world.
Oh,
You could
yes.
have been clean and sober for 12 years, but now you're out on the streets and you can still make that phone call. You still have your hookups, you know? You got your plugs and your custies. So your plugs are the ones that are dealing and your custies are your customers. So they know where to go if they need to, and the crews are waiting there for them if they want back.
Wow.
So yeah, even in jail, they understand the
Oh,
system so well. They
oh,
know
yeah.
the system better than I think some of the lawyers because they've
Oh,
been
yeah.
cheating it the whole time because that's what they're taught. The mentality again for me just like blows my mind because it's like you could be amazing businessmen. You could be the greatest entrepreneur. You could like the way that they think and how they put and invest their time in those things. You just think, man, put it on the other side of the coin and you could be successful. So how is it that we get them there?
Yes.
That's the
Yeah.
big question. What can we
Well,
do in order to get them there?
to transfer those wonderful skills, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, when you think about it, there's all the stigma attached to being incarcerated, being in a gang, being a drug addict, being on the streets. There's all that stigma that you have to overcome as well.
yeah,
And you have to be a really strong person
for
to do
sure,
that
for
and have the
sure.
support system around you Because when you come out of jail, and I know from experience, you don't even have a toothbrush.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
you're out in your orange
You're on
clothes with
your.
the flip flops they gave you, and that's that.
So
Yeah.
then, let's say if a person gets out in May and the weather's pretty good, and they get through the summer, it's okay to be on the streets, and then the weather starts getting a little cold. Then I may decide, I don't want to be on the streets all winter. I'm going to get arrested. I'm going to do something, steal something, get caught,
Yeah.
and then I'm back in 3 squares and a warm place to stay for the winter. How much of that goes on, do you think?
Um, I'd say enough. I wouldn't say like it's overly huge, but some people absolutely. I think again that's them using the system, right? And what I find too, even working with men and women that were incarcerated and they're coming out, not everybody's going to hire them because they have a criminal record.
That's right.
Excuse me. And it's dependent on the record. If you have a lot of assaults, who's going to want to hire somebody who wants to fight and throw punches all the time? So they have to apply for assistance to start somewhere. Well,
Right.
applying for assistance almost takes 6 weeks for them to receive cash. Maybe sometimes a little less, but it takes quite a while in order. So the mentality is, well, I could go to the streets, I could sell, and I could make $1,000 in 5 hours. So
Right.
that mentality is there. So how is it that we set them up to succeed and not put them in a situation where they might not have a place to lay their head? Excuse me. You know, that they know what they're good at. They know how to make their money. So we expect them to sit there and wait for 6 weeks. They're going to go back to
Wow.
the streets and what they're good at. And that's how they're going to make their money until something like that kicks in.
Wow.
And by then, they might have racked up another charge. So they go
Right.
back in. Their process of applying for welfare is now done because they're back inside.
Wow. So again, you see another vicious cycle, another cycle that,
Yeah.
and once you're on those hamster wheels, it's really hard to jump off with no safety nets,
They don't
right?
set them up to succeed, they set them up to fail.
Right.
You wonder why they
Well,
give up and why they go to these types of lifestyles. If nobody gives a crap, then why am I?
yeah, because it's a business, right? The whole prison thing, that's a business.
Mm-hmm.
And everything is a business. It always comes down to the money. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. What are your thoughts or feelings on and I guess maybe this is kind of the same question and only different. But my first husband was in a mental institution for 2.5 years. Like it looked like a jail, but it wasn't very long that he was in there that he became what I called institutionalized. He didn't want to come out, and he even had you can even acquire an institutional shuffle in the way that you walk. You don't lift your feet. And I know that as humans, we're very programmable. So it would be easy to become institutionalized and not want to come out. He didn't want to come out.
Yeah. It's not just in jail either, it's being part of that gang, being in
Yeah,
that being all that you know. So when I mentioned that people are born and raised in it, that's all they know. So going in and
right,
out, that's nothing to them. That's been their
right,
lifestyle. I mean, Dustin, who is supposed to join us today, that's someone who's institutionalized. Been
right,
in and out his whole life. He understands how it goes when he gets arrested. Okay, I'm going in for this. Trial's going to come up here. They have nothing. They'll withdraw the charges. Like they just know the ins and outs. They know everything.
wow,
And even some of the mentality and the thoughts and patterns that he has, although he's done a lot of amazing work and he's done a lot of programs and workshops. I think it takes a lot to deprogram the life that he's been through and the amount of years that he's been in it.
yeah. And we'll try
With
to
our
have him
youth.
on. Yeah, we'll try to
Yeah,
have him on another day. But
yeah.
but there's the other thing. Um, when you're struggling to get some kind of life back, there are so many distractions. You can't make a commitment. You can't make an
Mhm.
appointment. It's really those things that come naturally to us or we take for granted, those things become very, very huge, right?
Well, and
I
it's not
mean,
that they don't want to do better, and it's not that they
no,
don't want to change, and it's not that they don't have that proper mind frame to come out, and to create that change. It's just they're being blocked by so many walls, and that's why I say, like, they're set up to fail.
right.
I even worked in a halfway house. So they would come out, have certain sentences to finish, getting to be on CSO, so being in the community and finishing out their sentence that way. And even then, it was trying to find their place and, okay, I got to find a job. And then the PO comes to visit every Monday and they do a P test and they, have to go to programming, NA, whatever that looks like. There's only so many things that can keep them straight. But when they struggle and when they go through things, we're going to go back to the things that we know and the mentality that we had. So that's the way that they're going to react because they're not taught any different.
And it's
Oh,
easier. Not
absolutely.
and not to mention, and I put this out here to our viewers, not to mention the paperwork that is required to apply for things or to get the help in the first place.
Yeah.
You know, some people, that is overwhelming. Maybe they don't have access to the internet. There's all kinds of things
Mhm.
that we have every day to work with that they do not.
Yeah. Like even when guys come out, sometimes we have to get them their birth certificates, or we have to get them a health card, or we have to get them IDs, but you can't get one without the other. You need
Right.
to have an ID in order to get this. And if you don't have this, then you need this. And you're right, the amount of paperwork. And then on top of that, we're trying to find them housing. So the amount of housing applications you're putting out, it's not just a one page. I mean, yeah, you're going crazy throwing out all these referrals, whether we're putting them in detox or treatment, whether we're trying to find assisted living for them, whether we're trying to find whatever programs and services, connecting them to mental health services. The wait list is almost 6 months to a year. It's still backed up. So again, it's not like their intentions aren't pure and that they don't want the help. It's just they come out to a system that's failed them. So then they say, F the system.
Right.
They're smarter and they're going to go back and they're going to do the things that we do. But then we're the first to blame them for getting back into trouble and making these decisions. And it's like, if we're not going to teach them better and to teach them to do better, how can you expect a different result?
Exactly.
It's literally they're going in and out and it's a vicious cycle. It's just a circle. And it's like, you know what? They're more comfortable allowing them to do that than putting the money where they should be putting it. And that's
Yeah.
another thing that burnt me out is they're not listening to the frontline workers. I'm the one out on the streets looking for my youth if I notice that they're up on a missing persons report. I know where their hideouts are. Why? Because I took time to
Yeah.
figure out my youth and to see where they hang out. You don't see the
Absolutely.
social workers doing that. You don't see the people in government going out and looking for the youth. No,
No.
that's on us. We're the ones that are there filling out the paperwork, seeing the backups, seeing the faults in the system, and you bring it forward. And why fix what isn't broken would be their kind of motto. And it's like, well, there's a lot broken here.
Yeah.
We're trying to tell you, like,
Mhm.
take it from us, we're trying to tell you. We have that
Yes.
credibility, we know what's going on here.
But you see, we have to then go back to it's a business.
Yeah.
And every system is a business of some sort.
Yeah.
Outside the gang life, the gang is a business too, but we're in those gangs ourselves maybe, but it's legitimate and it looks good and um, everything has a price.
Well, and you have to remember too, like, even with Hell's Angels, some of them are cops, some of them are
Yes,
lawyers, some of them are judges, some of them are accountants, some of them are extremely smart, and that's what they get trained to do, to be part of that business.
that's
So when
right.
a guy goes through, well, you have the cop who's able to help out, then you have the lawyer who's able to feed to the judge, and then the judge to make a ruling because he went to school for these guys to get
That's
them
right.
off the hook in certain things. So I don't think people really realize how deep it goes,
Yes. Yes.
you know?
Yeah. Well, I have my own story around that because I uncovered a whole uh, mirage of high profile people who were satanically ritually abusing others, and I know about that. And you know what? They did everything to take me out because I had information, right? So sometimes we know too much, so we have to
Yeah.
be careful because uh, people will come after you.
Well, yeah, that's what my older brother said. He said, "Wow," because he was an RCMP. He said, "Nadzin, you should be one of our informants." I was like, "Nope." I said, "I'm good.
You're good.
I'll
All
stay
right.
on
Well,
this side." Yeah.
yeah. Well, our time, we've got about 5 minutes left. So I just always like to share that. And so that we can have some good things to say at the end of the show, some words of encouragement to everybody. And I just want to express my gratitude to you, Nedzen, for taking time to come on the show and help us present credible information, because that's content's very important to me, as you know. And if you haven't been in something or involved in something, you might know about it, but you don't know it like you do. This part of your journey has been all around that. So I just appreciate your time and your talent, and you're just such a great guest. And anybody want to talk, you're the best, as far as that goes. Um, what are you doing right now, and how's that tying into your past career? Let's end with that, because you're doing a lot of good work there. And by the way, I saw a big review the other day about the service that you provide in your place of employment. But tell us a little bit about why you're enjoying that so much.
I still get to be around people. I know that the gifts and talents that Creator gave me was to connect with people. So I might not be doing youth care work, legally and technically, but I'm a server and a bartender, and I still get to connect with a lot of people being new to Drayton and getting to meet the country folk and having conversation and just really enjoying my true authentic self. Knowing who I am and what I'm bringing to the table. And yeah, the review just pretty well said, having that sense of humor, laughing with them, treating them with the utmost regard pretty well. I mean, not the exact words, but in a yeah, so I'm really enjoying what I'm doing. It's something completely different. I'm still serving people. Again, I know that that's my job, but I'm doing it in a different way, and it really is setting my heart on fire. I am loving it. I am loving the people are loving me. That's a bonus. um yeah, and it's just been really exciting because I'm starting to put myself first here as well, and realizing that what I want matters as well. So I'm
Absolutely.
still helping. I'm still going to be a youth care worker. I'm still going to walk with people. I'm still going to be there to support people. And I think people are realizing who I am and again what I'm bringing to the table. So it's amazing. Yeah, I've never felt
Beautiful.
so loved and appreciated, and I've never felt so at peace and so at home, if you will. No longer in the
Nice.
survival mode. So it's nice to have finally found my place.
Yes, absolutely. And I read a review, and it was somebody had brought a group of people for a special birthday party, and the way that you interacted with them and served them, they wrote a post about it. And so, how cool is that? That's amazing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, tomorrow, what's today? Wednesday. Tomorrow, Thursday morning at 9 a.m., we'll be here with our former NHLer Doug Smith, and we're doing a show called The Press Box. And our special guest will be Paula Onez, and she's going to bring us up to speed on how she's doing with her business in creating meditations for people. So that'll be a fun show tomorrow. So once again, thank you, Nadzen. You've been watching the Today Show here on the Disability Channel. We're streaming live on Laurie Davis' Facebook page, also presently streaming live on our 2 YouTube channels. You can find us there. And all we ask is that you go in and share the show. So if there's someone in your family right now, a young person, a youth who's struggling, maybe they've been invited to be in a gang, play the show. Say, come, listen to this. And that could salvage, even if it salvaged one youth, it would be worth it, right, Nedzen?
Absolutely.
So don't
Absolutely.
stop keeping the good information to yourself. and click on the share button, not the like button, okay? Because it takes just as much energy. I never could figure that out. And we're having a family gathering on Sunday, and I'll see you then, Nedzen. That'll be so much fun.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
You bet.